Welcome to this tutorial on creating your first web page. If you're new to web development, you might be wondering where to start, and that's what we're going to cover in this video. Web development, as you may know, revolves around the use of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. But for today's video, we're going to focus solely on HTML, which is the backbone of any website you'll build. HTML, or Hypertext Markup Language, is what structures the content on a web page. It's how we tell the browser what's a heading, what's a paragraph, and even where to place images and other media. In this video, you'll be creating a very basic but functional web page. It will have a title, some text, and an image. By the end of this tutorial, you'll understand how to write HTML code and what each piece of it does. While the web page we create will be simple, it will lay the foundation for much more complex websites you'll build in the future. Before we dive into the code, let's go over the tools you'll need. Don't worry, we won't use anything complicated. All you need is a text editor, like Visual Studio Code or even Notepad, and a web browser to see the results of your code. If you have these tools installed and ready to go, then you're all set. Let's get started on our first web page and learn how to code in HTML. Before we jump into writing HTML, the first thing you need to do is set up a proper file structure for your web development projects. Having an organized file structure is key to maintaining clarity, especially as your projects grow in size and complexity. This structure ensures that all your files are stored neatly, making it easier to manage and work with them as your website evolves. So, let's go over how to create this structure in a way that will make your development process smoother. To begin with, you'll want to create a new folder on your computer that will serve as the root directory for your project. This folder will house all the files related to your website. Give this folder a meaningful name, like My First Website or something descriptive for the project you're working on. Inside this folder, create subfolders for different types of files that you'll be working with. A common setup includes folders like Images, CSS, and JS. The Images folder will store all the images you plan to use on your website, the CSS folder will store your cascading style sheets, and the JS folder will store any JavaScript files if you plan on adding interactivity later on. In addition to these folders, your root directory should also contain your HTML files. For your main page, create a file called index.html. This is a special file name recognized by web servers as the default page to display when someone visits a website. For example, when someone types in www.example.com, the server looks for the index.html file to display the homepage. By organizing your project in this way, you're setting yourself up for success. In larger projects, it's common to have even more subfolders for things like fonts, icons, or even third-party libraries, but for now, keeping it simple with index.html, CSS, and images will be enough to get started. As your projects grow, you can expand on this structure. Think of your file structure as the foundation of your project. It keeps everything in place and ensures that your code is easy to navigate, both for you and for anyone else who might work on the project in the future. Once you've created these folders and files, you can open the index.html file in your preferred code editor. Whether you're using Visual Studio Code, Sublime Text, or another editor, you should now have a blank file that's ready for you to start coding. This step may seem small, but it's essential to building clean, professional websites. Remember, staying organized will save you time and frustration as you add more content and functionality to your site. Proper file structure is a habit that every web developer should adopt early on. Now that your environment is set up, you're ready to start writing the code that will bring your web page to life. Let's dive right into building the basic structure of our web page. Every HTML document follows a specific format that browsers can understand. First, at the very top of our HTML file, we place the doctype HTML greater than declaration. This tag tells the browser that we're using HTML5, which is the latest version of the HTML standard. It's important to always include this declaration so that the browser knows how to interpret the content. Next, we have the opening HTML greater than tag. The HTML greater than tag encloses the entire content of our web page and tells the browser that everything inside this tag is written in HTML. Along with this tag, it's good practice to specify the language of the page using the lang attribute. For example, lang equals N for English. After the opening HTML greater than tag, we have the head section. This is where we include all the behind-the-scenes information about our page. This section won't contain anything that's directly visible to users, but it's crucial for how the page is presented. For instance, the title greater than tag within the head defines what text appears on the browser tab when users visit the page. You'll also notice the meta charset equals UTF-8 greater than tag, which ensures that our page can display a wide range of characters, whether they're symbols, letters, or special characters from different languages. This is important for making sure that your web page is globally accessible and renders correctly on all devices. Now comes the heart of the page, the body greater than section. Everything inside the body tag is what users will actually see on the web page. It could include text, images, links, forms, or any other content we want to display. For now, we'll keep it simple and just add some basic elements like headers and paragraphs, which are the most common elements you'll work with when building web pages. Don't worry, this is just the beginning. As we progress, you'll learn how to style these elements, add functionality, and create more complex structures. So, let's go ahead and add our first header inside the body tag. Now that we have the basic structure of our web page, let's start adding some actual content. We'll begin with the header. In HTML, headers are created using the h1 greater than to h6 greater than tags, with h1 being the largest and most important, and h6 being the smallest. For this example, we'll use an h1 tag to create a main heading for our page. Let's go ahead and type the following inside the body greater than tag. When this is rendered in the browser, it will display the text "Welcome to my first web page" in large, bold letters at the top of the page. This is a great way to introduce your visitors to the content of your site. Remember, you can have multiple headers on your page, and you can use smaller headers like h2, h3, and so on to create a hierarchy of content. Next, let's add a paragraph below the header. In HTML, paragraphs are created using the p greater than tag. Paragraphs are used for blocks of text, so let's type this below our h1 tag. Once you save this and refresh your browser, you'll see that the paragraph appears right below the header, with some default spacing between them. The text will be in a normal font size, and it's left aligned by default. One of the great things about HTML is that it automatically applies basic formatting, so you don't need to worry too much about spacing and alignment, at least, not yet. Later, when we dive into CSS, you'll learn how to customize the appearance of these elements to make your web pages look more polished and professional. Now that we've added some text to our web page, let's take things a step further by adding an image. Images are a great way to make your web page more engaging and visually appealing. In HTML, we use the img greater than tag to insert images. Unlike the tags we've used so far, the img greater than tag is self-closing, which means it doesn't need a separate closing tag. Let's add an image just below our paragraph. First, you'll need an image file. For this example, let's assume you have an image called example.jpg saved in the same folder as your index.html file. To add this image to your web page, the src attribute tells the browser where to find the image file, and the alt attribute provides alternative text in case the image doesn't load or if a screen reader is being used by someone with a visual impairment. Always include an alt attribute to make your web pages more accessible. Once you save your file and refresh the page, you should see the image appear below the paragraph. By default, the image will display at its original size, but don't worry, you can easily adjust the size using CSS, which we'll cover in a future video. For now, just enjoy the satisfaction of seeing a real image on your very first web page. And remember, images can come from many different sources. They can be local files, or you can use URLs to display images hosted online. Congratulations! You've successfully built your very first web page using HTML. We've walked through the foundational elements of HTML, including how to set up the basic structure with the doc type HTML greater than declaration, how to use the head greater than and body greater than sections, and how to add visible content to your page using headers, paragraphs, and images. At this stage, You've just scratched the surface of HTML's potential. While the page may look simple, the concepts you've learned are fundamental to all web development. You now have a better understanding of how websites are built from the ground up. By mastering these core concepts, you're well on your way to becoming a proficient web developer. Remember, what makes web development exciting is that it's incredibly versatile. From this basic structure, you can build all kinds of websites, whether it's a personal blog, a portfolio, or even an e-commerce site. HTML is just the first piece of the puzzle. As you continue, you'll learn how to enhance the functionality and aesthetics of your site with other technologies like CSS and JavaScript. These tools will allow you to control the style, layout, and interactivity of your pages, turning them into professional and user-friendly websites. In the next few videos, we'll dive into more advanced HTML features such as creating links and lists, as well as working with forms to gather user input. But for now, take pride in the fact that you've written real code and that it's the foundation for every web page you'll ever create. Your next steps are to keep practicing. Try playing around with what you've learned today by adding more content to your page. Maybe try including multiple paragraphs, different headers, or even experimenting with different image sizes. The more you experiment, the better you'll understand how HTML works and how to use it effectively. Great job so far, and I can't wait to see what you'll create next.